Well, I think we'll get started. Welcome everybody to this month's LPC Coffee. My name is Angie Denton. I'm the Communications Coordinator at the Animal Science Department. I co-chair the coffee and collaboration every month with Jennifer Scheich, but she's being a mom today. So she got the chance to go on a field trip with her youngest. And so I'm like, Mom, being a mom always comes first. So she had to back out today, and I will do my best to fill in for her as we host this month's event. But to get us started, I'm going to introduce Stacy Fox, our Executive Director, LPC Executive Director, to kind of give some updates and share some news with everyone.
Yeah. Well, hi, everyone. It was great to see so many of you at AMS and just, we see each other on Zoom, but it's so good to see people in person. So just really grateful for that and for all of you being here today. I know personally I'm excited about today's topic. Just as way of an update, our actiongram did go out last week. So if you're not on the list and you are a member to get the actiongram, I'll drop my email in the chat, but just send me an email or in the chat, we can talk it out as well about want to make sure you're getting all of our communication. As well as we sent some stuff out about getting your information updated for the member directory that's online and how to access that. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer that. I know it's new to do it online, and so we're just trying to figure it out, but that resource is there. So if you're looking for other LPC members, please go check that out. Now, I also want to talk a bit about our photo contest, which is why we have this great topic today, is because we have some past winners from our People's Choice Photography Contest. It used to be called the Best of the Bunch. The committee chose last year to change it to People's Choice, since it really is voted on by the people. So you may recall that it was historically around Ag Media Summit. The committee did choose to move it to the fall just to give us some separation from our awards contest, give us some cool things for people to do later in the fall as well. So that's going to open October 1st. And it will close October 31st. So you have plenty of time to find those great shots or go out and get some more with the way, not here in Texas, but I see all over Colorado and other places where the color's changing and everything. So it's a great chance to get out and get some more photos if you want to. Got some time. And then we'll do voting the first week of November. And then it's $5 per entry. Categories are livestock industry people, livestock scenic, and general. These are minimal editing outside of the general category as well. Sponsored by Modern Litho, so we're really grateful for their support, because there are cash prizes if you win a category, and then there is a canvas of your photo that will be sent to the overall winner. So we've got some good stuff going there, but I would really encourage you, if you're an LPC member, to participate. It's a low entry fee at $5 a photo, and then get the chance to compete with some other folks in the area, but in this area of photography. So yeah, really excited about it. I know some people maybe thought we weren't doing it this year, so just wanted to clear we are doing it just a little later, just to separate it, because we do have some photography categories within our awards contest now. So we just wanted to separate it and make sure y'all had time to get some additional photos in. And then while everybody's entering other things, it kind of gets lost. So we're excited to really get to focus on that and highlight some of our super talented photographers within LPC. So there it is, October 1st. We'll start taking entries, and let me know if you have any questions, but really grateful for everybody getting on today.
Thanks, Stacy. Appreciate your update and look forward to seeing everybody's entries into the photo contest. So today our focus is the best photo we ever shot, and then they're going to share with us what it took to capture their favorite photos. And we have a very talented panel of three of our members, photographers, and we have Katy Holdener from BioZyme, Katy Kemp from Cultivate Agency, and Abbie, I thought I was going to screw up her last name, not her first name. Sorry, Abbie. Lankitus from the University of Missouri. And I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about themselves and share their photo and kind of go through the story behind it, why they were taking it, what it was for, and kind of talk through that stuff. And then at the end, we're going to open it up for questions. So also in the chat, if you guys can share who you are and who you're with, and we'll keep track of everyone, and look forward to chatting later. So Katy, Kemp, you were going to go first, I think. So
Thanks, Angie and Stacy, and thanks everybody for having me. I see a lot of faces that I know. For those of you who I have not had the chance to meet yet, as I said, my name is Katy Kemp and I do work for Cultivate Agency. I head up our branding strategies and our social media for Cultivate Agency for our clients. So my role includes more so taking photos for social. I don't necessarily go out on photo shoots for Cultivate Agency, but I do enjoy photography and I have taken photos for previous roles. So that's kind of my tie into photography. It's really more just for me at this point in time. And then if I see something I like, or when we're on shoot for clients, I'll grab cell phone photos for social, but not so much the big photo shoots for my current role. With that, I think I will go ahead and share my screen. So I believe we're supposed to share the photo before we talk about it. And let me know if this doesn't work. What's that? So this is not the photo that won last year. However, this is the photo that won in 2017. And as the prompt was, our favorite photo ever. And this is my late father. So it is easily my favorite photo ever. And one of the favorite photos I've ever taken of him. I've taken a lot. But I had the pleasure of winning the contest in 2017 with this photo. I'm very grateful for it because it wasn't long after and we surprisingly lost my father. So with that, as far as, answering some of the questions, the story and stuff behind the photo, I obviously live on a ranch. I help run our Angus herd and farm. And this day, I don't know if y'all can see that. My screen has lines going through it. I don't know what that is. Hope that's on y'all's screen. I don't know what those green lines are. Sorry. On this day, we were branding our bulls, and we freeze branded. And for those of you who probably have never met my father, I know a couple people on here know him, not many. He was a very gruff man, typical boomer cowboy, not a lot of words, not a lot of emotion unless it was anger or frustration. So, very much fitting of your demographics. And he was always, let's get the job done. And it was just him and I on this day branding bulls. And so, part of it and part of the lessons is don't be afraid to take your camera and get the shot no matter what, because you never know how much time you'll have. And I know that's especially hard when you are working around cattle and or you're on a photo shoot with a working ranch and the working cattle, you want to stay out of the way. So my advice there is know your surroundings, know animal behaviors and flight zones and that stuff, and stay out of, I've been on photo shoots where we've had breeding projects for ABS Global, things like that. Like, don't get in the way, but also don't be afraid to take the shot, because again, you just don't know how many more chances you will have to ever get the shot. This is one of the only photo shoots I did with us branding before we lost him, so I'm very thankful for it. So don't be afraid to get the shot. With that, I just kind of knew he was wearing, just a typical Wrangler chambray button-down shirt. He had on his hat, his glasses. We're freeze branding black cattle, so there's not necessarily a lot of color going on other than like the blue pre-fert shoot. So I chose to desaturate all the colors in this photo and make it black and white so that the subject matter kind of stood out with my personal choice as a photographer. There is a color version of this photo, obviously online and social media, but given it was black cattle freeze branding and he was wearing basically gray colors, if you will, with gray gloves and a faded blue work button-down chambray shirt, I chose just to go black and white on this photo. Again, there's not really much of behind the story other than that itself, that I was really wanting to capture him and us working the cattle, and that's what I did that day. Was it for fun or work? Obviously, it was more for my personal use. And so that was the purpose of it. This was not for any publication or anything like that. As far as getting the shot, for me on this, what it entailed is I was holding the timer that day because he's freeze branding, if you know anything about freeze branding. certain time in, and I was working the head gate. So basically I strapped my camera around my neck like we all do, and I would flip between running tailgates and head gates, getting one in, and then as soon as I started the timer, I just started clicking and going, and getting as many shots as I could before he would yell at me, you know, get back in the game or focus or whatever it is you need to do. So really my setup of the shot wasn't a lot. It was more so get the shot in between working cattle. And you know, if you're on a photo shoot and you're obviously not the one working the cattle themselves, you know, again, just be ready to click and shoot, have your lighting set. It's okay to do a couple of test photos to make sure you've got your apertures and all of those things set right. I was shooting wide open on this photo. So I was just basically adjusting shutter speed at that point because I really only wanted to focus on him and the branding. I didn't necessarily want the shoot in focus. So I was shooting wide open, and I was just playing with shutter speed at that point in time. And so, you know, if you're familiar and you're over there on your things, you know, so you don't have to stop and look, just do your stuff to what works the lighting in your situation on that day. So that's kind of all technical that it took for me on that. I did not have on a high powered zoom lens, obviously, because I was standing right there on the shoot, but I also wasn't shooting super wide angle either. So this was probably, I would go back and look at the Photoshop settings, but I'm probably like a 50 to 70 range in this shot would be my guess off top of my head. If anybody wants to know, I can do that. As far as what did I learn on this photo, it's really, I did not do hardly any post photo editing. I literally just desaturated it to grayscale black and white. And that was it. So there's not a whole lot I had to play with this photo, just itself taking it from full color black and white made the frost and stuff stand out and those types of things. Again, because I was really more so shooting wide open, I had him in focus. So it's where you can, you know, kind of see some of the textures in his skin, the textures on the gloves, because that was my focus point. Whereas if you were to zoom in, obviously the shoot is blurred out, and even the brand itself is not super in focus because he was my focal point. Pretty much the focal point itself on the shot was in the range between his eyeglasses to his right hand. So that's where you see all the detail the most on that, but that was kind of my focal point in shooting wide open. And I was at close range, so pretty much all of him was going to be in focus. If I had if I had backed off, I might have changed my aperture a little bit more so that certain things were in focus or not. And so really that's kind of my gist on this. I know the horse photo, some of you may have been looking for that from the Tetons from last year. Only advice I have there, again, kind of goes to knowing your subject matter. You know, if horses are sleeping, just be careful of loose lips, those types of things. That was one thing we had to work through last year on taking those photos. So really goes back to knowing your subject matter, having fun, and then as far as gear and stuff, I guess that's maybe another lesson out there, excuse me, is it's really easy today to get caught up on wanting the flashiest, most progressive gear there is. And I myself fall between that. You know, you want those 4K cameras, you want all the stuff. Even the photo that I submitted last year was shot on a 2012-13 DSLR 5100, so not even a full frame. So, you know, if you can set up the shot and you know what you're doing, skill is always going to trump, in my opinion, a technical of what your equipment is. That's not saying equipment doesn't help or you don't need to upgrade. I probably am overdue for an upgrade on some of my equipment. But, you know, when I first started photography, I think that was something that was really easy to get sucked into, is constantly wanting to upgrade and constantly wanting the latest version and stuff like that. And, you know, like I said, even with the horse photo that won in the Grand Tetons last year, you don't have to have the flashiest equipment to take a really good photo. If you can compose it right, set your lighting correct with your shutter speed, and then you know your subject matter and how you want to frame it up, you're certainly within range of doing that with basically almost any camera, may not every camera, but most cameras in today's point in time. So I think with that, if unless there's questions, or do we want to hold questions to the end, Angie? I don't have much else.
Yeah, I think if we can hold questions to the end, we'll get through everybody and then we'll do questions if that's okay.
Works for me. Then I'm going to stop sharing and let Katy Holder, I think, is next.
Yes, ma'am. Give me 1 second. I will try to share my screen without all of my tabs opening. Okay. Can you guys see that? Oh,
Not yet.
not yet. Okay. How about now?
Got it.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm also Katy, spelled the exact same way, which think is just so fun. I currently work for BioZyme Incorporated as a graphic designer, but the picture you can see here on the left, I actually took when I was employed by Superior Livestock Auction. And I think this was either 2021 or 2022 best of the bunch when we were in Raleigh. And I was super fortunate to have won that award because this picture means a lot to me. It was a really very early morning shoot. I put the location over on the right-hand side. If anyone on here is from New Mexico or West Texas, you know how desolate it is out there. We were about 9 hours from Fort Worth. I drove up the night before for this shoot. This picture is actually taken about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, not in the evening, which most people think it's usually an evening, a sunset shoot. But the cloudiness in the background is actually dust, a ton of dust. And that's why I included that picture of my jacket, my camera, which I don't know if you guys can see that in the image or not, but I was absolutely covered head to toe in dirt during this photo shoot. I saved myself the embarrassment of including the selfie I took when I got back in my car because every wrinkle and everything on my face was absolutely caked in about an inch of dirt, but it made it really worth it. It was a very early morning delivery. So the cattle you see in the background here were being shipped off to, I believe, a buyer in Kansas. And it was just a really important moment in my career because I had been on a few deliveries before this, but none really this far out in the middle of quite literally nowhere. And this was this family's livelihood, right? It was being shipped off that morning and they were getting a check that afternoon from their superior rep. And I was able to be there to capture those moments and really see the behind the scenes of some of these old school working ranches that really survive off of delivery of truckloads of cattle. So I learned a lot that morning from not only the reps, but also my gear on how to shoot right directly into the sun and into the dust and be covered in it basically from there on out. It was a really, really fun morning. Let me pull up the questions to make sure I don't miss anything, but I was shooting this with my 5D 70-200, and I will totally echo what Katy was just talking about. It is not always about the fanciest gear and the newest and latest and greatest. I've been using this camera for going on 6 or 7 years now, and I probably could upgrade. I probably should upgrade at some point, but I love it. I know it like the back of my hand. It's almost like muscle memory now, getting shots taken, and I think that's a lesson I had to learn over the last several years is switching things up and maybe trying different cameras. And I've rented a bunch of gear for different shoots, and I always go back to my tried and true, and I know it so easily now that I don't have to think. And that was always really important to me to be able to get the right shot super quickly. Like she was saying, just take as many photos as you possibly can and see what happens. But as far as editing went on this photo, I really didn't have to do a whole lot. I was shooting right in manual like everyone else, and I think I maybe did a little bit of color correction just to warm it up a tiny bit, but nothing crazy. The only editing I've done is when we use this photo in ads, I added a gradient to the bottom of the ad just to add contact information and kind of dilute the lens flare there, but nothing too crazy. So I think that's my spiel. Abbie, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Cool. Let me go. Because I'll switch between a few. Sure. Okay. Everyone seeing that? Okay, cool. So this is a photo that I took last October for, oh, sorry. First off, hi, I'm Abbie. I am the university photographer for the University of Missouri. Before I was here, I was a communication specialist with certified Angus beef, which explains my familiarity with LPC and the membership. I don't get to do ag stories as much as I'd like or as much as I'd want to. But the alumni magazine is a wonderful place that has, obviously a very diverse set of alumni that sends me on the ag shoots that I want to go see. So this was for a story in the magazine of a gentleman who'd been raising some hogs under a new brand of like sustainability and environmentalism, and his hogs are free ranging. He's in a forest type atmosphere, more in like, it's about half an hour to 45 minutes south of Columbia, Missouri, where I'm at. So it's more hilly, more foresty. And so he was just showing me around his farm, as we're all pretty used to. This was a pretty unique situation. Russ could not see the light beams that were coming in. So we went to his finishing barn, and it was interesting that the barn was almost like leaned up against a cutout of a hill, and you could walk between the barn and like the cutout of the hill to get around to the fence, but then you had to go around. So I walked up on top of the hill with him first to look over into the fence, where his finishing hogs were, and it was like kind of an okay view. And then he's like, well, let me go in and like I'll just spread some hay. So rather than going down and around and following him, I went back up the hill to the point, and there's a window into the barn. And when I looked into the window, this is what I saw. And so, yeah, it was an audible gasp to myself, with maybe a few choice cuss words of like, here it is, this is the shot. Oh my gosh, like, get it. I will say some of the preparedness in many of my shoots like this is that I have 2 camera bodies on me, with my 70-200 and my 24-70 on a black rapid harness, so that when this was available, I didn't have to worry about changing the lens. I just pulled up my camera with the 70-200, and went after it. It was already kind of shaded and dark. It was later in the evening. It had been raining. And the clouds parted just perfectly, weirdly. We've been in those moments where like there's nothing I could have done to make this. It just happened and I was in the right spot. My aperture was at 2.8. I was at an ISO of 800, 400th of a second. And shooting with a Canon R5. I used to be anti-mirrorless when it was new because I was like, that's not any different. Why would that be any whatever? And then a photographer that I met here at the university had mirrorless and completely changed my entire worldview on that equipment. The technology for facial tracking in particular is incredible. I would agree with both Katie's that doesn't matter the equipment you have, if you're not prepared or know how to take a shot, like there's nothing that will save you technology wise. But if you know what you're doing and you're aware, being able to harness the technology that's available will only increase the quality of shots that you take. In particular, I mean, this is pretty hazy. I'm at 102 millimeters on my 70-200, and it catches his face, and tracks with it. So that was incredibly helpful for this shot. Yeah, you'll see at the bottom, this kind of like weird, it doesn't distract entirely, but there was like a feed dispenser up, so I had to shoot over that into the thing to kind of crop that out, but it lined up so perfectly with them waiting to get some hay, and he's walking around and he gets caught. Yeah, I'm trying to think. The equipment I shot it, I mean, I edited it in Lightroom, not much, mostly enhanced the clarity. there's a dehaze option in Lightroom that is a little bit different than contrast, that if in an image like this where it's very hazy, will separate some of that colors out to give more depth. So I added a touch of the dehazing, which is just another, like I said, a different clarity contrast type thing, but really it's mostly untouched. And then I wanted to show how it was used in the magazine. So as part of the other story, showing me around, the graphic designer / art director at the magazine is pretty incredible. But my favorite photo got a small part, which kind of like, it feels like the photo and it just wasn't used. And that's, I mean, we all know that's how it goes, but was this spread and then got used here. But yeah, in beautiful fall, October, he like plants his own forest and working on it. Has worked with someone from Spain to recreate a forest similar to his habitat so that his hogs can free graze in this area. But yeah, let's try to see if there's anything. Oh, and then at one, I'm part of an organization called the University Photographers Association of America. And this photo won its category, General Features and Illustrations, in its monthly contest. And then I submitted it to the annual contest and it got 3rd place in that category. I am unfortunately in a not with LPC at the moment, because I came to them immediately when I got to the university and was like, hey, so there's LPC and ACN, and they're like, for ag? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so you're not going to be doing a ton of that. Hard for us to fit the bill for that. So I'm part of the University Photographer Association of America. I love LPC. I cannot speak about it highly enough. And if and when I ever become in the position to be an active member again, I absolutely 100% will and can't wait to go back to AMS and all that mess. But yeah, I think that's it for me.
Well, thank you, Katie, and Abbie. Tremendous photos and loved hearing your stories behind them. So we'll open it up for questions. Does anybody have some questions that you can either put them in the chat or unmute and ask away?
I have a quick question for Abbie. When I was looking at that picture, you said something about you saw it through the window. So did you shoot through the window to get that?
It was, yes, there wasn't a glass pane. It was a window view. So it was like, there might have been a glass at some point, but it was a very old barn. It was framed. So some of the photos that I took, I did zoom out where it had framed the inside image, but really at that point you lost what was happening. So I just zoomed in through it to shoot it.
What was the biggest change for you when you went to mirrorless? And I guess that's a question for you, Abbie, and anybody else if you've shot mirrorless.
Biggest change. Some of the controls are different. It's almost like, you know, you're used to Canon and you're picking up a Nikon. And you just gotta figure out the buttons are a little different and the settings are a little weird. But the biggest thing was just noticing how well it tracks faces and objects. I can't go back to a DSLR because of it. I've tried and been like, well, now I'm so used to it automatically tracking that trying to, manually focus, hold it, move where I need to go has become it's harder. It's harder than what the mirrorless is doing. And the lenses that come with it, although I'm in a place where it was quicker to get the body. We're slowly transitioning the lenses. So it's easy peasy to get a converter and put your DSLR lenses onto your mirrorless camera. Still works great. I use it day to day. The RF lenses that match to the Canon, to the mirrorless lenses, are quicker to match the technology of the mirrorless cameras. They also have an extra adjustable ring where you can, like the buttons that you can control to be like, well, I'm going to change my ISO here and my shutter speed here. You can make that ring an adjustable thing that you want it to be in the menu. You can control that. So it's an extra piece of like being it without having to take it back and change stuff. You can do it all while keeping it to your face. I think that's, yeah, it's quick. The facial recognition, and then the R5 that I shoot with like shoots at like 48 or 53 megapixels. So the files are huge, which works in my setting of like, if anybody wants to print a poster or a billboard or anything like that, the raw files are massive that can be used for a variety of situations. I think those are the main ones. There's a lot that comes with it, but that's the main stuff.
Anybody else have a question? I have one while you guys are thinking about them. How to use photography to tell a story?
Nobody wants to go first. I mean, for me, it is the visual. I mean, I know we've heard those before. It is the visual story. I think in today's point in time, especially the way that we consume stories from social media to still analog print things, we have become skimmers. And so we might read a couple of the keywords or opening sentence and skim down too. To me, it still goes back to the fundamentals. That story needs to tell what that photo needs to tell what your words are about in about 30 seconds or less on a printed version, in my opinion. And you've got about 3 seconds from scrolling on a social or a reel or something before you capture them and suck them in. And so if you want them to read all of the words, you've got to make them stop. And so to me, compelling storytelling is both the words you use in the messaging and the visuals combined. And I think that's pretty fundamental.
Yeah, I agree with everything she said. You have such a limited amount of time to grab people's attentions nowadays, and especially in ag. Like if we're not out there in the boonies, basically getting these images and representing the ranchers and the farmers that we get to work with, most Americans would never see what it truly gets to look like. So I think that's a really good way to put it.
Sorry, I like went and then just went blanked. Because the situation that I'm in, because it's not just ag now, how I'm using photography to tell a story across the university is kind of diverse in that stuff that gets used for our internal newsroom and for the alumni magazine, I want to share a story that people can follow from beginning to end and understand what's happening. So it's less of a like a knockout image and more just a, you know, like you're telling the story visually from beginning to end, and it sounds maybe mundane, but there's the types of shots that you take, and something that like National Geographic, I've heard National Geographic editors talk about something that they've changed in the last decade or so are the types of images that they put into a story, and it's your scene setting photo, you know, your context, where are you? Can you place the person where they're at, to your portraits? And that's not just like standing and smiling straight shot, but like what is a good photo of the person that explains who they are? My favorite are like, I had one of a veterinarian that I took while I was at certified Angus beef, Bob Smith, and he was telling me and my coworker stories, and he was leaning over his pickup truck and he told a story that like tickled him and he started laughing. And I have like a side shot of him just kind of like almost half reared back in a laugh, leaning over his truck. And like that's not a look at me kind of portrait. It's a but it is a portrait of him, of who he is. And then your detail shots, your color shots, you know, don't be afraid to get extra tight if it involves telling the whole story. I saw a photo the other day of photojournalist, but it does a lot of personal stuff. And she had taken a picture of the back of her daughter's, like just her back. You could see a little bit of her braided ponytail, but she had been riding her bike in the mud. So there was splattered mud on her back and kind of in her hair. And it was just of the square, like just a little, the end of her braid with her jacket and splattered mud. And it was just like muddy bike days. And like that itself tells a whole story in the detail. And then your transition shots, like what if you're going from one place to another, like showcasing the shots of someone moving from one place to another, like in and out of doors or in and out of a pickup truck. So your scene setting, your transitions, your portraits, your details. And like a final almost closing shot of like a summary of either a mood or a place. And that is how I try to go about even my marketing shoots of like, I do a lot for the College of Health Sciences and they have different majors. And what does the nuclear medicine major look like? A wide shot of the place in the hospital where they're at, details of like writing down notes, portraits of them, like even if it's a staged client, them laughing and comforting and talking to the client. So in all of these ways of those types of photos, telling the story, no matter where you are, that you could follow it from beginning to end, and know what it is without ever reading a word.
Stacy had asked in the chat, what do you often print your work? If so, what medium is your favorite? Abbie answered, but Katie, do you have an answer to how you print your work?
I mean, for me, mostly it's just going to be prints for friends or family. I have not had ambition to launch a photography website to sell prints. I have had people ask, and then generally, because again, it's more of a hobby than something that I do, I'll email them a file or I'll recommend a print shop that I know does a great job. So for me, that's the use. Or occasionally, I'll have publications reach out for a cover photo or something like that, and I'll send them the digital file. So that's really kind of the use for my photography per se at this point in time. Obviously, previous work and things like that have put it into publishing and stuff like that from interning with Certifying as Beef in those days. But for now, most of mine are just for friends and family use, wall coverage, gifts of that nature.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. A lot of what I was doing when I was with Superior was shooting for print ads and our catalogs and things like that. So a lot of it was small printed pieces. I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I said, I love a good canvas print or a metal print, like Abbie said in the chat. But mainly it ends up being artwork on my walls unless someone reaches out and really wants to use it.
Elaine said, all of your images presented were natural lighting. How much do you use artificial lighting in your pics? Anybody want to answer that?
I can start with this one. So leaving Certified Angus Beef and my time at Texas Tech and my freelance work for newspapers, I didn't use any artificial lighting. And I prided myself on being a purist of that, just using the light that I was given. And then I met some people who've taught me studio lighting, and I've spent over 2 years now working with it, and it's phenomenal and magical. And you should try to teach yourself at least just using one light. Learn how to use one light that's not on top of your camera. Whether it's strobe or LED, it changes so much. Anybody use it, could do it. But you can control your settings and your situations without worrying about the weather or where you're at. You can light up, you can create dramatic lighting or soft lighting. I'll even link to like what I recommend for like it's a small little 200-watt flash that you put on a tripod, and there's like a kit like softbox on it, right? And so when I go into like labs on campus that are terribly lit, or it's like bright LEDs but the shadows are dark, like just putting that little softbox off to the side and just popping just a little bit, and you've eliminated all those shadows. You've put a catch in the eye. So in a lot of photos, even if you're working with artificial or natural light, you want a catch in the eye where you can see the light hitting it. If you don't have that catch, it kind of makes the person look dead or dull, versus like having the catch is like they're alive, they're awake. So I mean, it helps. I'm sitting in front of a window so you can like see it. But I also recommend, like, you can tell people using artificial light. If you go to the photo, zoom into their eyes and you can see the shape of the softbox, or if they used a grid, or if there's 2 or 3 different light sources. That's the trick of like learning who used lighting and how. Just zoom into the eye of the photo and you can see that all reflected there. But just learning one light has changed so much, and I take it with me in the field now. Whether it's an ag shoot, whether it's at a hospital or a lab, or portraits just across campus, I'll bring that and it makes a world of difference. Just the quality has gone up of consistent, good lights, no matter if it's noon, no matter if it's 7 p.m., if it's 10 a.m., if it's cloudy. Obviously some weather conditions are better than others and you don't have to use a light, but if it's bad, one single light and learning how to use that, and there's a million YouTube videos on just single light usage, changes so much. So like, I feel like I didn't get that knowledge before coming to the university, because I was like, well, we're natural light photographers. We can use what we're given and make magic, and that's fantastic. And I thought there was something wrong with using extra lights, but it just makes your situations more consistent and better, and I would recommend doing it now.
Katie or Katie, anything to add?
I just learned so much from Abbie. That's so helpful. No, I honestly don't hardly ever shoot in a studio. I did one time, I did our portraits for a new website. And I had someone else helping me with the lighting. So I have no help here. I just learned a ton.
Yeah, I do have training in photography in terms of setting them up, but I don't set up studio shoots. Also, since I don't go on paid shoots where I'm like, oh, I want to make sure I don't have any shadows, I don't take it. And so I agree with what Abbie says, that you can see the difference when you use it. There have been times where just me, and again, I think this kind of goes to using the tools, but understanding the fundamentals of, photography itself is chasing light, understanding light. I have had to use some cowboy ingenuity sometimes where it's like, oh, this isn't quite lit right away. And I have taken a couple of cell phones and like turned the flashlights on and set them way off so they're not harsh LED lights. But again, so set your camera up and literally move around in front of your viewfinder with a shadow box to start, and you can literally watch and see the progression. It's pretty much how you'll learn. There's a ton of tutorials on YouTube and stuff, so play with it is literally the best way to learn if you're not familiar with it. But yeah, I would echo what Abbie says. It helps a lot. I just don't do it because if we're working cattle, I'm already trying to squeeze photos off in between cattle. I'm not going to set up a shadow box or things like that. I also don't use a speed light. It's just one more thing in the way for me. So personally, I don't use it. If I was doing photo shoots for paid clients or in studios, absolutely would 100%. But mine is more so personal choice of where I'm at in my photography journey.
Well, we try to respect that 45-minute mark. So is there any one last question? If not, thank you, Katie and Abbie, for sharing your expertise. I'm sure if anybody has any follow-up questions, they can reach out to you and ask questions. And we sure appreciate everyone tuning in. Stay tuned on social media for our next coffee and collaboration, we'll get this edited and posted to the website and social media here in the next few days. So everybody have a great rest of their day. It was great to eat lunch with you, and take care.